Your shrimp was caught by slaves. The $5 billion lie. The barcode scans, the bag hits your cart, and somewhere a man who hasn't seen land in 6 months peels skin from his palm instead of a shrimp shell. Your $8 dinner rides on a debt he can't pay and a boat he can't leave. The label says sustainable, the captain says work or swim. Meanwhile, an inbox in a corporate tower holds the email that explains exactly why this keeps happening. One seal you trust, the one that made you feel safe, helped hide it. You didn't buy shrimp. You rented someone's freedom by the pound. How the $5 billion lie became normal. To understand how this got ordinary, we need to rewind to the moment shrimp went from luxury to loss leader. Big retailers and restaurant chains chased volume, promising everyday low prices and endless shrimp nights. Countries across Asia scaled up fast: Thailand, India, Vietnam, Indonesia, China, each racing to hit price points dictated not by fishing costs or wages, but by supermarket promotions planned months ahead. Processors cut margins until only one variable could flex: labor you don't see. On paper, the fix looked clean: farmed, sustainable, ethically sourced. Traceability platforms, smiling seals, and audits booked well in advance, but the supply grew more complex. Brokers bundled product from dozens of farms and landing sites. Pre-processing moved into small peeling sheds off the books. Paperwork followed truck routes, not shrimp. The clean label became a stage set. What nobody put on the sticker: debt recruitment, confiscated passports, boats flagged to nowhere, and kids standing on stools to reach the tables. One government knew enough to issue warnings, another preferred not to see, and one company memo spelled out the trade-off: meet the price or lose the shelf. It's a $5 billion lie because that's the value protected when labor gets erased. Our path is simple: meet the bait, too cheap economics, see the trap, debt, documents, disappearances, watch the wash, paper laundering, then test the seals you trust. To see the lie clearly, you have to meet the bait. The bait: too cheap shrimp economics. Here's the math nobody prints on the back of the package. A retailer sets a promotional price months ahead, say $5.99 for a 1-pound bag. Category managers demand consistent supply across thousands of stores, with a margin target that leaves pennies for everything downstream. Processors are told politely to find efficiencies. Fuel prices rise, feed costs rise, and yet the promotion stays. Something has to give. Meanwhile, buyers reward vendors who hit the number. If you can shave 10 cents per pound, you win the order. Brokers step in to make the impossible possible. They bundle lots from multiple farms and landing sites, smoothing out supply shocks. In that commingled flow, origin transforms from a location into a spreadsheet cell. The phrase that unlocks it is paper alignment. It doesn't change the shrimp. It changes what the shrimp appears to be. Pre-processing, the dirty work of peeling and deveining, moves into the shadows. The official plant is audited, chilled, fluorescently. The unofficial peeling shed is a cement room behind a market or a warehouse with plastic flaps instead of doors. Workers are paid by the kilo, not the hour. Faster hands, colder brine, longer shifts. The economics smile when fingers go numb. Retailers, food service giants, and pet food brands all push the same lever: volume contracts tied to quarterly targets. The incentive for every actor in the chain is simple: the cheaper you make it, the more you sell. The higher you're on time, in full metrics, the better your vendor scorecard. You don't need to write "ignore labor" in an email when the spreadsheet does it for you. Unknown to most consumers, the shrimp you buy often passed through a broker who never touched a boat or a pond. They touched documents, commercial invoices, packing lists, certificates. They retagged pallets, split lots, aligned labels with orders. When an importer needs a Mexican flag story on shrimp lifted off a Thai dock, the paperwork can make it fit through a loophole called third country processing. The shrimp travels, the narrative resets. There's a phrase inside plants: full value yield. It measures how close your finished product weight comes to the raw input after peeling, deheading, glazing, and trim. Hit the yield, hit the price. If the raw input gets more expensive, the only way to maintain the yield at the same price is to squeeze labor harder or outsource it to places where a clock never starts. It's not an accident that peeling sheds proliferate where inspections are rare and where migrant workers are plentiful. Micro story: at a discount supermarket, a Friday end cap flashes "buy one, get one." A family grabs 2 bags, dinner solved for the week. Across the world, a 19-year-old who borrowed money to cross a border scrapes shells at midnight. His debt grows by the day: room, fees, fines for dropping product. He learns to work faster when his hands stop bleeding. The BOGO resets next quarter, his ledger doesn't. Price pressure also flows inland to fish meal, the feed that fattens farmed shrimp. Wild catch used for feed often comes from fleets flagged for illegal fishing and labor abuse. When fish meal is cheap, farmed shrimp can hit lower price points. When it isn't, someone looks for a substitution or a shadow supplier. Either way, the final bag in your freezer holds the aggregated cost cutting of a system that treats people as the variable. Here's where it gets precise. A processor staring at a margin gap of 3% across 1 million pounds needs 18 cents per pound back. Cutting packaging saves maybe 3 cents. Negotiating freight saves another 2. Energy savings are seasonal. Labor, if peeling offsite drops the effective rate from $7 per day to $3, the gap closes. Nobody writes use forced labor. They write move pre-processing to external partners. It's tidy language for an ugly move. Brokers build their value on plausible deniability. They present supplier lists that look robust, then keep the real network off the slide. They ask the audit date and make sure production runs after the auditor leaves. They commingle inputs at landing sites because that's where traceability goes to die. Piles of shrimp from multiple boats, sorted by size, not by boat. The traceability software later will assign a vessel ID. The shrimp never met the ID. Retailers prefer 3 things: low prices, stable supply, and no headlines. 2 out of 3 is survivable. All 3 is promotion-worthy. The lie becomes normal because each link can say, truthfully, we didn't see it. The captain didn't see the retailer. The buyer didn't see the peeling shed. The auditor saw a lobby and a training poster. The consumer saw a dolphin icon and a blue tick. This was the moment everything changed. When volume contracts met opaque sourcing, and the industry discovered that punishment for getting caught was a press statement and a new pledge. The economics taught everyone the same lesson: cutting labor costs carries less risk than missing a shelf reset. You can fire a supplier. You can't apologize to 3,000 stores for empty freezers. Cheap only works if labor can't walk away. And the system is designed to make sure they don't. The trap, debt, documents, and disappearances. Cheap only works if labor can't walk away, so the trap starts long before the boat. A recruiter visits a village with glossy promises, factory jobs, steady wages, legal papers. The fee is refundable from future pay. Families pawn land deeds, cousins pool cash. A van takes them to a border room where contracts appear in a language they can't read. They sign because turning back means shame and debt with interest. At the depot, passports vanish for processing. Phones go into a locker for safety. The men are told their papers are being stamped. The women are told they'll peel shrimp for a few months and send money home. The fee quietly doubles: transport, medical checks, placement costs. They're now in debt to the person who controls their ID. That's not a job, that's leverage. Debt math looks small on paper and huge in life. A $700 recruitment fee at 10% interest becomes $1,000 after months of training with no pay. Wages are piece rate or withheld until probation ends. Deduction stack, dorm bed, meals, debt repayment, fines for slow work. Try to leave and you owe everything at once. Without a passport, you can't get past the checkpoint anyway. On the docks, boat owners need crew. Brokers deliver new hires with neat stacks of copied IDs that may belong to someone else. Men are moved at night, boarded fast, and told the catch will pay their debt. Once lines are off, the boat is the law. The captain holds the ledger, the radio, and the only path back to shore. If you argue, you don't work. If you don't work, you don't eat. Days blur into a 20-hour rhythm. Nets, haul, gut, ice, mend, repeat. Sleep comes in splinters in airless bunks that smell like diesel and rot. Hands split open, salt burns raw skin, infection blooms with no medicine. A wave knocks a deckhand off his feet. The captain shouts to keep hauling. There's blood in the scuppers and no time to clean it. You learn to tape your fingers, then tape over the tape. Violence isn't a rumor, it's a tool. Men describe beatings for dropping catch, being kicked for asking about pay, being threatened with a knife or a gun. On some vessels, stingray tails are used as whips. The threat is simple and constant: jump or obey. Months pass without land, and the radio call that could bring help is never made. Meanwhile, on land, the trap looks tidy. Peeling sheds take the overflow from clean plants. Workers arrive at dawn and leave when the pallets are empty. Child labor hides in plain sight, a girl on a stool to reach the table speed. Phones are banned on the floor. Supervisors watch the exits. Pay is tallied by kilo. Shortfalls are blamed on waste. What nobody knew at the time, or what people pretended not to know, is how the paperwork smoothed this all out. Confiscated passports become voluntary safekeeping. Debt is employment advances. A crew list shows names that match ID copies, not faces on deck. A supplier self-assessment checks boxes about no forced labor, while the peeling is subcontracted to an address not listed on any form. Documents do more than lie, they erase. A pre-announced audit means the unregistered shed closes for a day and workers vanish into dorms. The main plant produces perfect logs, training completed, grievance mechanism in place, pay slips printed. Auditors see binders and signatures. They don't see the broker who pays in cash behind the market or the ledger that tracks debt like a shackle. Micro story: a man tries to jump ship at night when the vessel anchors near a light he thinks is a town. He ties empty jerry cans to his waist and slips over the side. The current drags him, the light recedes. Hours later, a patrol boat passes close enough to hear him shout. The captain on his boat radios calmly, "All crew accounted for." The patrol keeps moving. He's hauled back aboard at dawn, blue with cold, and put straight to work. Disappearances aren't always dramatic. Sometimes a worker is transferred and never returns. Sometimes his family gets a message from a borrowed phone, "Don't call, they're watching." Sometimes a body is buried at sea. The boat keeps moving because the order must be filled and the plant expects the shipment on Tuesday. Debt keeps growing even when wages don't. If you're sick, you owe for medicine. If you slow down, you owe for lost time. If you ask for your passport, you're told you'll get it after peak season. The peak never ends. On paper, the contract is 1 year. In practice, it renews itself every morning when the horn sounds and the nets go over. Meanwhile, the paperwork says everything's fine. Paper clean, hands dirty. Supply chain laundering. While men work under threats at sea and women peel until their hands split, the paperwork quietly makes everything acceptable. Laundering doesn't need soap. It needs commingling, a retag, and a quiet afternoon in a back office. Start at the landing site. Boats arrive in bursts, some legal, some not, some transshipped at sea. The catch pours into plastic tubs. Buyers don't ask which net produced which crate, they ask size and freshness. Workers sort by count per pound, hose down the piles and move them to a shared cold room. This is where traceability dies. Shrimp from multiple vessels, some clean, some dirty, share ice, drains, and a ledger line labeled mixed lot. Later, software will assign a vessel ID to the outgoing lot, but the shrimp never traveled as a single story. It traveled as a crowd. Meanwhile, fish that fed farmed shrimp arrives next door. Trash fish, small pelagic squid, ground into fish meal that will later boost farm output. The streams cross. Wild catch becomes feed. Feed fattens farmed shrimp. Both funnel back through the same processors. If your traceability system only tracks finished shrimp and not feed inputs, you miss how illegal fishing and forced labor bleed into farm economics. What nobody checks closely enough is the retagging step. A broker buys mixed lots, then rationalizes them on paper. New lot numbers, new country of origin lines, new commercial invoices. Shell companies buy from shell lots. If a buyer needs a cleaner narrative, the broker sends product to a third country processor for a quick rework, devein, repackage, relabel. Country of origin becomes the place where the last substantial transformation occurred. The shrimp didn't change, the origin did. Now the choreography. Audits are scheduled in advance and production is arranged like a stage play. When the auditor arrives, the registered line runs at full compliance. Hairnet snug, wash station stocked, training logs signed. Subcontracted peeling shuts down for the day or moves to an off-hour shift. An HR manager explains the grievance hotline and someone calls it later to prove it works. The auditor samples documents, sees a tidy supplier list, and notes minor nonconformities. The grade comes back, compliant with corrective actions. The real work resumes after the clipboard leaves. Digital traceability often looks futuristic but runs on bad inputs. Barcodes map pallets to lots, lots to invoices, invoices to purchase orders. If the first link is a mixed lot entered as a single source, the system repeats a lie with machine precision. Dashboards show green checks, QR codes resolve to vessel names. A consumer scans and sees a smiling boat and a lat-long pin. None of it reflects the commingling at the dock or the retagging in transit. Psych hook, certainty effect. The neat trace to vessel story feels truer than messy reality, so we stop asking questions. Paper laundering relies on time gaps. A plant can receive 40 tons on Monday, ship 40 tons on Thursday, and reconcile inventory with a handful of spreadsheets. If a question arises later, an NGO publishes a report, a lawsuit lands, someone pulls the file and finds every document present, supplier declarations, codes of conduct, audit certificates. The question shifts from what happened to can you prove intent? Most can't. That's the point. Unknown to the end buyer, third-party processors exist to reset identities. Product enters under one HS code, leaves under another. A label printer changes a species name from local trade slang to an approved market term. A country of origin line updates to reflect the new processing site. For customs, the paperwork fits. For ethics, the trail bends in the middle and doesn't bend back. Microstory, a quality manager at a mid-sized processor spends a Tuesday night with a stack of bills of lading. She highlights lot codes that don't match intake logs, then emails a broker for clarification. He replies, "Use the revised COOs attached. Client wants consolidated documentation." She updates the file and signs off the shipment. It sails on Wednesday. She sleeps badly. Meanwhile, at scale, manufacturers split orders across plants to meet lead times. One retailer wants 10 SKUs, 2 glaze levels, 3 bag sizes. The plant pulls from whatever inventory meets spec. If a clean lot runs short, a near-equivalent lot fills the gap. Near-equivalent means the right count and color, not the right story. A vendor assurance team reviews a monthly exception report and sees nothing unusual. Regulators try to keep up. Import control systems flag shipments by species, country, and risk, but commingled lots hide in plain sight and third-country processing blurs flags. The burden of proof sits with the agency, while the burden of convenience sits with the importer. Unless someone raids a shed, follows a truck, or subpoenas emails, the chain stays intact. This was the moment everything changed. Supply chains got faster than enforcement. Retagged pallets move in hours, investigations take months. In that gap, a seal lands on a bag, a coupon drops, and a family buys dinner that can't be traced back to a single honest day's work. And the certifications. Here's where it gets awkward. The seal you trust. Certification failures. You know the stickers, the ocean blue checkmark, the green leaf, the friendly acronym that turns a freezer door into a conscience cleanser. They promise two things at once. The planet is fine and people are fine. What they actually check is narrower. Species counts, bycatch rules, farm effluent, paperwork controls on site. The thing you think it means, no forced labor, no trafficking, often sits outside the audit scope or in an appendix nobody reads. Here's how the promise breaks. Certifications are designed for what they can see: registered farms, licensed vessels, audited factories. But the subcontracting layers we just walked through, the off-book peeling sheds, the brokers who shuffle lots, the third-country retag, live exactly where many standards stop. A plant can be certified while its pre-processing is external. A vessel can be assessed, while crew recruitment sits with a labor broker who never meets an auditor. The gap isn't a mystery inside the industry. Labels define boundaries, farm gate to factory door or factory door to export pallet. Everything before and after becomes out of scope. That's not a loophole by accident, it's a cost decision. Checking upstream labor takes time, translators, unannounced visits, and worker interviews away from management's earshot. That's expensive. So the seal narrows the field of view until the problem falls just outside the frame. Then comes the conflict nobody prints on the bag. Certifiers are paid by those they certify. The client schedules the audit, hosts the team, and funds the follow-up. Fail too many plants, and the certifier loses business to a rival with the same logo vocabulary but a lighter touch. It's not a conspiracy, it's a market. When compliance becomes billable hours, rigor competes with renewal rates. Audit choreography thrives in this setup. Pre-announced visits give suppliers time to stage compliance. Dorms get cleaned, underage workers stay home. The external peeling shuts for a day. HR produces grievance logs with tidy resolutions and timestamps that line up a little too perfectly. Auditors sample a sliver of a workforce, review binders, and accept management escorts as a safety protocol. Meanwhile, the subcontracted labor that makes the price work never steps in front of a clipboard. Case patterns keep surfacing. Certified plants sourcing from uncertified sheds. Certified fisheries landing into mixed lots where vessel-level traceability collapses. Certified farms buying feed from fishmeal suppliers linked to illegal fishing and forced labor. The seal on the finished shrimp doesn't reflect the lives that went into the inputs. If your standard tracks water quality but not debt bondage, your bag can be sustainable and abusive at the same time. Here's where digital systems add glossy paint over rotten wood. QR codes resolve to dashboards with vessel names, coordinates, harvest dates. It feels transparent. But if the original lot was commingled or the labor was off-book, the code just repeats a curated narrative. Traceability theater is when a system proves what the supplier claimed without ever testing whether the claim maps to reality. It's clean data built on dirty ground. Consumer confusion is baked into the design. Sustainable sounds like a moral blanket. For many seals, it's an environmental term of art. Stock health, habitat impact, farm effluent, important, yes, but not a synonym for no forced labor. Packaging collapses these concepts into one friendly stamp, and busy shoppers do the rest. The result, a label that feels like a safety belt and functions like a blindfold. Some programs are trying to close the gaps. Pilot worker voice lines, unannounced audits, recruiter pays hiring, vessel monitoring. Progress exists, but it's uneven and easy to market. A company announces a new standard, wins headlines, then carves exceptions in the fine print. Phased adoption, high-risk areas under review, subcontracted preprocessing, temporarily permitted. Meanwhile, volume orders keep rolling, and the unit economics haven't changed. Microstory, a supermarket buyer points to a seal on a spec sheet and says, "If it's got that, we're good." The supplier nods and schedules production. Weeks later, an NGO publishes a report on the region's peeling sheds. The buyer forwards the link to compliance. Compliance checks the CERT database. Valid. A note goes on file. No action, supplier certified. The report fades, the seal stays. Why do brands lean so hard on seals? Because they turn risk into a square inch of packaging. They buy plausible deniability and customer trust at once. If something breaks, the brand points to the standard points to the audit points to the scope. Responsibility evaporates along with accountability. This was the moment everything changed. Certification became a shield instead of a searchlight. It should have chased the places we can't see, the debt, the documents, the disappearances. Instead, in too many cases, it certified the part of the story that was already tidy and left the rest to hope. If watchdogs can't see it, who can? Psych hook, your brain treats that seal like a seatbelt. It lowers your guard. That's authority bias plus moral licensing in action, and it's exactly why logos sell better than proof. The middlemen, brokers, barons, and boat owners. While certifications gave everyone a place to point, the real power sat in rooms without logos. Broker offices above wet markets, port cafes where envelopes slid across tables, wheelhouses where ledgers mattered more than laws. If you want to see how forced labor stays supplied on demand, you have to meet the people who convert human need into inventory. Brokers first, not the LinkedIn kind, the fixers. They keep lists of crews, captains, peeling crews, cold trucks, and cops who answer their phones. A retailer asks for steady volume. A processor calls the broker to smooth the gaps. He offers aggregation, which sounds efficient and clean. What he sells is control. He knows which recruiter can deliver 30 Burmese men by Friday, which shed can run overnight, which customs officer accepts processing country as origin and waves a pallet through. Their leverage is debt. Recruiters upcountry front the loans, transport documents, job placement, and sell that debt downstream to vessel owners and shed bosses. Each hand that touches the debt adds a fee. By the time a worker steps on deck, his debt serves more people than his wage ever will. The broker tracks every name like an asset. If someone runs, he doesn't panic. He transfers the balance to the next man and the boat keeps sailing. Unknown to the buyers, boat owners are the barons of this microeconomy. Some own fleets and ice plants. Others lease vessels from financiers who prefer their names off the registry. Ownership hides behind shell companies and nominee directors. Flags of convenience keep jurisdiction loose. A captain might answer to a cousin who answers to a silent partner with friends in the police. When a raid hits, paperwork appears to show compliance. When a journalist asks, the vessel was under repair. Protection isn't theoretical. In port towns, intimidation is logistics. Shed owners hire guards who double as escorts when auditors show up. Labor organizers get followed. Migrant dorms learn the routine. If a bus arrives unannounced, stay inside until someone knocks with the right phrase. The same broker who secures crew can make a problem disappear by turning a wage complaint into a deportation risk. Everyone learns the rule. Keep your head down. The season will end. Cash keeps it fluid. Boats pay crew advances in cash. Sheds settle piece rate in cash. Bribes move in cash. Cash means no payroll records, no bank trails, no overtime claims. If a worker demands back pay, he meets a ledger that subtracts dorm rent, lost time penalties, and damage fines. The balance lands on zero or negative. He walks away with nothing but the debt he came with. Here, where brands re-enter carefully. Vendor managers email suppliers about cost competitiveness. A broker replies with a unit price that magically meets the target. No one asks how. They don't need to. The middlemen have already squeezed the only variable that moves fast enough: labor. When a scandal breaks, brands freeze a supplier, issue a statement, and reopen with a corrective action plan. The middlemen don't mind. They recalibrate, repaper, and route the same goods through a sister company. Micro-story: a boat owner sits in a portside cafe, a calculator beside his tea. Fuel costs, bait, captain's cut, loan repayment, security, ice cash advances. The margin is a sliver. He calls a broker. "I need 10 men by Monday, same terms." The broker nods, already texting a recruiter 2 provinces away, who is already standing in a village field, saying the words legal papers and steady pay. Organized crime isn't always a separate cartel. It's the lubricant in the gears. Some ports run on fees for docking, unloading, and protection. Off-the-books landings move catch to trucks that skip the official weighbridge and head straight to cold storage controlled by a cousin of a cousin. When a shipment needs to be invisible, it is. When a shipment needs to look certified, a cousin borrows a code. Systemic opacity isn't a failure, it's a feature that someone engineered. Meanwhile, middlemen study enforcement like a weather report. If a country tightens inspections, they switch landing sites. If import rules add a document, they print it. If an NGO focuses on vessels, they push volume through farms fed by fishmeal from those same vessels. The chain flexes at the joints they built. They don't beat rules, they root around them. Why do brands prefer not to ask? Because the answers trigger obligations, contract terminations, supply gaps, higher prices, headlines. Plausible deniability is cheap. We relied on third-party audits, fits in a press release. We paid a price that guaranteed abuse doesn't. The middlemen know this, so they offer what the market rewards: volume on time, paperwork aligned, questions handled. This was the moment everything changed. When brokers stopped being service providers and became gatekeepers, when barons stitched fleets to sheds with chains of debt, when owners learned that a threatened worker is a predictable worker. The boats kept moving because the middlemen made sure they could, and because every link above them chose not to look down. The inbox receipt. Everyone knew enough. Start with what's public because it sets the baseline. Reporters documented enslaved crews in Benjana and peeling sheds in Samut Sakhan. In 2015, the Associated Press investigation helped free more than 2,000 men and traced tainted seafood into U.S. retail and restaurant supply chains. Raids freed thousands. Courts saw lawsuits. The U.S. downgraded Thailand to Tier 3 in the 2014 Trafficking in Persons report before later improving its ranking with condition. The EU issued a yellow card to Thailand's fisheries in 2015 for IUU fishing. Import alerts and withhold release orders flagged shipments over the late 2010s and early 2020s. None of that lived in rumor. It lived in headlines, advisories, and government cables. Anyone buying shrimp at scale had a Google problem before they had a labor problem. I'll open the corporate inbox. Supplier warnings were routine. Rising costs require moving pre-processing to external partners. Translation: off-book sheds. A compliance officer adds a note, scope limited to certified facilities, and moves the thread to archive. In another chain, a vendor says a price target can be met contingent on flexibility, origin, and lead times. The category manager replies, "Understood, price trumps origin." Nobody writes forced labor. They don't need to. The euphemisms are industry standard. Retailer pressure runs downhill in crisp language. New promo cadence approved. Reset Q3, $5.99 floor. Must hold supply continuity. A procurement lead writes to multiple suppliers. Will reward on time in full at target price. One supplier, nervous, replies, "Audit schedule conflicts with production reality." The buyer answers, "Production should adapt. Audits can be accommodated locally." Locally means move the messy step out of frame. When the clipboard arrives, internal memos read like caution tape. After a major investigation, a brand circulates immediate actions, reaffirm code of conduct, require updated supplier self-assessments, request audit certificates. A week later, a commercial VP emails, "We cannot afford to lose shelf space over temporary suspensions. Fast-track alternative channels." Alternative channels are the sister companies brokers keep for moments like this. The inbox becomes a map of how to pause compliance and keep product moving. Government cables and NGO reports piled up. One report listed risk by country and species, noting forced labor ties in capture fisheries feeding fishmeal and labor abuses in processing hubs. Another called out commingling and third country processing. a trade association circulated a summary with key takeaways for members. It reached legal, sustainability, and merchandising. Legal flagged reputational risk. Sustainability flagged engage suppliers. Merchandising flagged nothing and sent out next quarter's asks. Microstory, a corporate social responsibility manager drafts a slide deck. Title, Seafood Risk Update. She walks the exec team through incidents, remediation, and gaps, AP's 2015 findings, EU's 2015 yellow card, US SIMP data fields, NGO reports on commingling. A CFO asks, what'll it cost to fix? She estimates pennies per pound. The merchandising head says, pennies across our volume is millions. We'd lose price leadership. The deck ends with next steps. The next steps become a pilot in a single region and a press release. Public investigations made it impossible to claim ignorance. Import bans hit specific firms, watch lists expanded. The U.S. Seafood Import Monitoring Program demanded more data on certain species. Customs asked for harvest area vessel IDs. Importers replied with clean lines because the paper was tidy even if the docks weren't. When regulators seized a shipment, companies announced cooperation and conducted internal reviews. After the spike of attention, orders resumed with enhanced oversight. Inside supplier portals, documents lined up like dominoes, certificates, self-attestations, corrective action plans. A supplier flagged a temporary labor partner to meet a rush order. Compliance requested the partner's details. The vendor uploaded a scanned ID and a rental agreement for an address that was a market alley. The portal accepted the file. The order shipped, on time, in full. Emails show the calculus in plain language. We support ethical recruitment but cannot absorb full recruiter pays costs at this time. Propose phased approach. Unannounced audits disrupt production. Recommend scheduling windows. Full lot-level traceability would require segregation at landing, not feasible without price revision. A brand wrote, we intend to lead on human rights, then declined the only steps that would test it where it mattered. Meanwhile, lawsuit discovery pulled threads. Plaintiffs' counsel obtained vendor scorecards ranking cost and on-time delivery above all. A redacted email revealed a buyer asking whether a flagged supplier had a clean affiliate. Counsel quoted it in a complaint. The case settled, terms sealed. The inbox didn't change. The pattern hardened, crisis, statement, corrective action plan, quiet resume. Retailers issued stern language about zero tolerance. Suppliers ran time-limited cleanups. Brokers shifted pathways. A year later, the same products flowed through a slightly different set of names. The inbox recorded each pivot. Reroute via redacted until scrutiny eases. Suspend direct buys. Continue through JV partner. Pause NGO engagement until further notice. One more micro-story. A mid-level buyer writes a late-night note to herself after reading a fresh report. We know enough. She drafts a request for proposals that bakes in unannounced, worker-led audits, real traceability, recruiter pays. Morning comes. Her boss forwards an email. Leadership approved aggressive pricing for Q4. No scope creep. She closes her draft and reuses last year's specs. The inbox keeps the unsent file. Everyone knew enough to act before the next promo, before the next raid, before the next memo. They just knew enough to calculate the cost and choose the shelf. The loopholes. Law with no teeth. While the inbox filled with warnings, the law tried to catch up with a moving target. The problem is simple to say and hard to fix. The crime lives where borders blur, time stretches, and records vanish. Jurisdiction fails at sea. Flags are rented like P.O. boxes, and by the time a rule is written, the route has already changed. Psychological reality, check. Complexity bias makes us accept it's complicated as a reason to do nothing, exactly the cover these networks exploit. Start on the water. Vessels fly flags of convenience that sell cheap registrations and loose oversight. A Thai-owned boat can be Belizean on Monday and Panamanian by Friday with a radio call and a wire transfer. When a crew reports abuse, which country's cops get on a skiff? Whose court holds the case? Meanwhile, captains transship catch to reefers offshore, floating freezers that reset the clock. The fish moves, the crew doesn't. Any paper trail snaps in the middle of the ocean. On land, import rules sound tough. The United States can block goods made with forced labor under the Tariff Act, 19 U.S.C. Section 1307, and programs like the Seafood Import Monitoring Program, launched 2018, expanded since demand data, harvest area vessel ID landing port. But commingling, mixing product at docks and plants, turns enforcement into a shell game. If one illegal crate touches 10 legal ones, the output becomes a mixed lot. unless the importer segregated by vessel from the first ice bath. Proving taint is like proving which raindrops fed a river. Evidentiary standards do the rest. Agencies need specific shipment-level proof. Companies have certificates and invoices that look perfect. Investigators chase rumors, try to match names to faces, and hit walls. Shell companies dissolve, captains switch phones, crew are deported before they testify. The clock beats the case. Labor inspections are the ground game, and they're outgunned. Budget-starved teams check registered plants during business hours. The unregistered peeling shed runs at night. Inspectors review logbooks. The real payroll is cash. Without unannounced, worker-led interviews, it's theater. Walk the floor, stamp the form, head back through a gate where the guard smiles and the supervisor exhales. Corruption isn't a plot twist, it's a line item. In some ports, facilitation fees buy silence. Trafficking cases stall. Migrant workers get picked up for lacking papers that their boss confiscated, fined, and deported. Witnesses removed, story erased. When high-level pressure comes, yellow cards from the EU, tier rankings from the US, there's a sprint of visible reform. New laws, task forces, training sessions. Then the spotlight moves and budgets drift back to normal. Trade policy pulls the other way. Countries want exports, brands want shelves full, and consumers want deals. A government can threaten bans, but industry argues jobs and diplomatic ties. So the fix becomes incremental. Pilot projects, voluntary standards, data pilots. Meanwhile, boats sail on. Legislators write careful language, middlemen rewrite routes. Seizures make headlines but work like rain on stone. One container gets stopped, a press release lands, and the rest of the week's cargo clears. Networks adapt fast. If a port gets jumpy, shipments slide to a neighbor. If a species list expands, suppliers switch codes and sell the same product through processing countries that reset origin. Loopholes aren't gaps, they're doors that were built for speed and never meant to carry the weight of ethics. Here's a quiet truth. The law tracks products, not power. It knows HS codes, not debt chains. It sees tariff lines, not broker-led dorms. So enforcement searches for misdeclared species and missing documents, while abuse hides in documents that are immaculate and species that are exactly what the label says. When the law finally looks past the label, it needs testimony from people who risk retaliation to speak, in languages investigators don't share, about events that happened months far from shore. Microstory, a customs analyst flags a shipment. Origin story too tidy, timing too tight. She requests supporting docs. A broker replies in an hour with perfect scans. Vessel IDs, catch certificates, third country processing invoices. The analyst knows commingling is likely and proof is absent. She calls an investigator who sighs, "Unless you've got a name and a statement, it's clean on paper." The container is released. Someone's dinner moves on. Meanwhile, well-meaning programs get stretched thin. Port state measures let countries deny landing to IUU-linked vessels, but only if the vessel shows up. Reefers transfer offshore and declare somewhere friendlier. Digital traceability looks promising until you realize systems don't verify the origin of the first entry. Garbage in, glossy app out. What would teeth look like? Legal presumption against mixed, untraceable lots. Mandatory segregation and lot-level accounting from dock to bag. Recruiter pays hiring baked into contracts with penalties that bite. Unannounced inspections backed by worker hotlines that route around bosses and trigger real protection. Liability that climbs the chain. Retailers on the hook for what they buy, not just what they print. And budgets that match the rhetoric. Investigators with time, translators, and safety. Until then, the law will keep chasing, and the boats will keep moving. The boat, a day you'll never see. Dawn isn't sunrise out here, it's a horn and a boot on a bunk. The deck is already slick with melted ice. Nets spool out like gray curtains, then vanish into black water. Coffee is rice and fish broth slurped from a dented tin. You count your fingers before the first haul because you might not get to count them later. Quotas don't care about weather. The captain points at a sonar screen and the engine growls toward a swarm. The first set hits, rope burns, a winch squeals, bodies lean hard in rhythm that isn't quite safe. Shrimp tumble over the rail with jellyfish and trash fish, a pink-gray avalanche that stings when it hits your wrists. You move fast because cold is merciless. Anything that lingers turns to stink, and stink turns to fine. The clock is a rumor. Work happens when nets hit, rest happens when nets don't. Someone tapes a split knuckle with plastic, breathes through a cracked tooth, keeps moving. Diesel smoke clings to your tongue. The captain yells without looking at faces because faces don't matter if the hold isn't full. He keeps the ledger, you keep the pace. There's a rule everyone knows. If you slow down, you're lazy. If you get hurt, you're clumsy. If you fall, you were careless. The deck pitches. A wave slaps so hard your knees buckle. You think about the ladder for 1 second too long and a boot finds your rib. The captain's threat isn't theatrical. He has a radio and an ocean. Work or swim isn't a metaphor out here. Food is timed to the engine's hum. Rice, fish scraps, fermented paste. You eat sitting on a coil of rope with hands you can't get clean. Fresh water is rationed. Saltwater showers don't heal. Infection waits for the smallest cut and blooms under tape. No doctor, no antibiotics, just gauze if the last boat left any behind. You learn to keep quiet because complaining is the same as asking to disappear. Nobody brings up pay because there isn't any to bring up. Wages are a promise tied to land, and land is 6 months away. The debt sits heavier than the ice. After this run, the captain says, after this run, the next run starts. Phones are locked in a plastic box for safety. If you're allowed a call, it's on speaker with a clock. Your wife asks if you're eating. You tell her yes and swallow the lie. Night doesn't cool the boat, it tightens it. Floodlights turn the sea into a bright, endless wall. Moths burn themselves to death on the bulbs. Flying fish slap your ankles. The deck never dries. Nets come in heavy. A man slips, catches a cable with 2 fingers, screams, and is told to keep working. Later, he'll soak his hand in diesel because that's what the older men say helps. Rumors circle with the current. A boat that never came back. A boy who jumped for a light and got pulled under by his boots. A captain who kept a body in ice for 3 days because there was nowhere to put it. You tell yourself those are other boats. You know better, you don't say it. Micro story, near midnight, the catch slows. The captain angles toward a cluster of faint glows, other boats working the same patch. You spot a shadow of land. A deckhand, no more than 20, ties 2 empty jerry cans to his waist. He looks at the water, then at the wheelhouse. He goes over silently. 10 seconds later, a shout. The captain keys the radio. All crew accounted for. You haul the next net with a new rhythm. Short, breathless. And don't ask who's missing when the count comes back right on paper. Morning resets the lie. Ice gets shoveled over last night's catch. A hose blasts the deck. Blood spirals down the scupper. Someone sweeps shrimp legs and jellyfish bells into a bucket and dumps it overboard. Another set, another hour, another day. The GPS logs become paperwork. The hold becomes inventory. Your hands become the part nobody writes down. Payday is always tomorrow. When the boat finally noses into a harbor, a man with a clipboard meets the gangway. He checks boxes while you unload, eyes skipping past the faces. On land, there's a truck waiting and a buyer pushing for size and count. You watch your work vanish into tubs labeled with a company name you've seen on a supermarket ad. Your passport is still with the broker. Your debt is still with you. Back on the boat, someone laughs at a joke you don't hear. The horn sounds again. The ledger didn't move. The label you'll never see just got printed. The store, how it lands in your freezer. Back on land, everything sharpens and softens at once. Fluorescents hum, conveyors whisper, knives thrum. The processor trims antennae, cuts to count, and hits glaze. That glaze, 2%, 5%, sometimes 10%, is ice sold as value. A few extra grams per piece and the math smiles. Bags line up, clear windows facing forward, species name tight, claims tighter. Multi-country ingredient lists appear for a reason. Harvest one place, peel another, pack a third. Origin becomes a passport stamp, not a life lived. Inside the plant office, a label spec sheet rules production. 2125, tail on, deveined, 5% glaze, product of processing country. The line leader works to the spec, the QA tech works to the yield, the planner works to the purchase order. If a clean lot runs short, a near equivalent fills the gap. Near equivalent means the same look in a pan, not the same path to your plate. The bag prints the truth it's allowed to tell. Category managers at retail don't think in boats, they think in sets. Freezer doors are real estate measured in inches and eye level. Price points are lanes. Opening price point, good, better, best. If 2 suppliers offer near identical shrimp and one hits $5.99, that one gets the lane. Promotions turn the key. End caps, BOGOs, loyalty coupons, all driven by a calendar that doesn't care how last week's catch was peeled. Volume solves problems. Margin loves velocity. Unknown to you, the processor sells a mix of SKUs across channels. Retail, food service, pet food. The trimmings from your neat tail-on bag become mince for dumplings or filler for chowder. The smallest sizes go to value packs. The heads and shells head to flavor bases or meal. Nothing is wasted except the people. A truck door thumps shut. A seal goes on. A bill of lading lists lot codes that look consistent because the spreadsheet made them consistent. E-commerce adds a gloss coat. Product pages sing, sustainably sourced, antibiotic-free, traceable to vessel. Photos show a pristine boat and a sunrise that might be stock art. Wild-caught rides next to farm-raised in the same carousel, as if they're variations on flavor, not entirely different supply chains with different risk maps. Buzzwords stack like glaze: transparency, responsibility, community. Click to add, click to forget. Here, S where confusion pays. Wild-caught sounds rugged, farm-raised sounds clean. In reality, risk lives in both. At sea labor on the wild side, feed and pre-processing on the farm side. A product of line tells you the last place transformation happened, not where the risk did. Third country processing turns a Thai problem into a packed in Vietnam solution. Your freezer can hold shrimp that never touched the country on the bag. Microstory: a copywriter sits at a desk with a style guide and a deadline. Legal says avoid guarantees, marketing wants warmth. She writes, thoughtfully sourced from trusted partners. It's technically true, someone trusts someone, but it lands like a promise. The page goes live. The reviews talk about texture and price. No one asks what trusted cost a stranger. Category reviews set the year's fate. Vendors show decks with seals, savings, and shelf-ready shippers. A buyer flips to the cost slide, then to the promotion calendar. Can you support 3 events at floor? A supplier nods. Later, they email a broker. Need coverage Q3, price locked. The broker routes volume through an affiliate that can meet the number. The buyer gets trucks on time. The freezer gets filled. The story gets shorter. In store, a shopper faces a wall of frost and choices measured in seconds. Eyes catch the badge: blue, green, gold. A strike-through price feels like a win. Dinner wants a quick thaw, a lemon, a pen that won't stick. No one imagines a landing site ledger, a mixed lot, a retag. The scanner beeps. The system logs movement. A family eats quietly while an inbox elsewhere fills with next quarter's asks. Processors aren't cartoon villains. Many try to clean up: internal peeling, worker voice lines, unannounced checks. But when a retailer moves to a competitor for 9 cents a pound, the pilot program becomes a press line and a memory. Without price cushions and enforced segregation at docks, the cleanest plants still drink from dirty pipes. Meanwhile, returns management hums. If a bag crystallizes from refreeze, if a code misprints, pallets boomerang back. Rework shifts open, thaw, sort, reglaze, rebag. Each pass adds another chance for lots to mingle, stories to blur, and labels to keep telling the same small truths. This is how it lands in your freezer. As a product engineered to meet expectations, not as a history you're invited to see. By the time your pan sizzles, everything that mattered most has been rendered into claims, counts, and codes that fit a shelf, a slogan, and a price that made sense to everybody but the person who couldn't leave. What actually works? We can't audit our way out of this with clipboards and slogans. What works looks different because it centers the only people who see the abuse when it happens: workers. Behavioral lever: make cheating harder than complying by reversing incentives and shrinking the gray zones where debt and commingling flourish. Start with contracts that have teeth. Real purchasing agreements tie price and volume to unannounced worker-led audits. Not a scheduled tour, surprise access, multilingual interviewers, private conversations away from supervisors, with the right to follow product to subcontractors. If a supplier blocks access or workers report confiscated passports or recruitment fees, the contract triggers automatic financial penalties and order suspension. No corrective action plan without restitution. Fees repaid, documents returned, back wages paid, and proof of safe return for anyone requesting it. Worker voice channels matter only if they route around the boss. Independent hotlines staffed by trusted NGOs, text and messaging options in Burmese, Khmer, Lao, Vietnamese, Tagalog, and Thai, and guaranteed protection against retaliation. The channel isn't a poster, it's a budget line. Suppliers fund it, brands verify usage patterns and response time. One detail proves it's real. Cases can escalate to the buyer's legal team if unresolved in 7 days, and unresolved cases automatically freeze purchase orders from that facility. Then fix the route. Recruiter pays hiring. The employer pays every fee: placement, transport, medical checks, visas. Workers pay zero, full stop. Contracts specify no fees to workers, and audits verify by cross-checking remittance slips and interviewing new hires about debt. Any fee surface triggers repayment within 30 days or orders pause. Brands backstop this with a remediation fund so suppliers can't claim cash flow excuses while workers wait. This aligns with emerging best practice in responsible recruitment, adopted by leading firms after 2015 investigation. On the water, visibility beats paper. Mandatory AIS or equivalent vessel tracking on every supplier boat, with geofencing to flag transshipment at sea and suspicious loitering patterns. Landing site controls that matter. Segregated intake by vessel, color-coded totes, vessel IDs on physical tags that follow the lot to the factory intake. A simple rule that shifts power, no commingling. If a plant can't segregate by vessel and lot at the dock, it doesn't ship to you, period. This pairs with SIMP lot-level data and port state measures when landings occur. Peeling sheds are either brought in-house and registered or cut out. That means licensed facilities tied to payroll systems, minimum wage compliance, time clocks, and CCTV at docks and doors, not to police workers, but to verify inflows and outflows match lot records. External preprocessing exists only if it's audited to the same standard, with the right to show up unannounced at 10 p.m. if a shed exists off the books. Its product doesn't enter your book. Traceability has to be lot level and testable. Each pallet carries a chain that includes farm or vessel ID, landing site, date timestamps, and any third country processing hop. Data gets hashed and time-stamped so edits leave a fingerprint. Quarterly stress tests matter. Pick a bag at random in a store, request full chain within 48 hours, and spot check the landing site logs and payroll against it. If data clashes, timelines impossible, vessels in 2 ports at once, penalties trip automatically. Paper won't protect people unless pay does. Require wage ledgers that match bank transfers, not cash. Randomly sample pay slips and compare to work hours gathered through worker interviews and swipe logs. Where piece rate is used, set a floor that equals legal minimum wages at average speeds and ban deductions for speed, waste, or lost time without documented, appealable justification. Dockside cash advances are recorded and capped with repayment terms that don't exceed legal limit. Import due diligence needs a harder edge. Buyers commit to purchase only traceable, segregated lots and accept fewer SKUs rather than accept mixed lots. Contracts define untraceable as non-compliant, not high risk. Brands designate a stop-by authority in compliance that outranks sales. If the red line is crossed, shipments stop. Publicly list compliant suppliers and suspended ones with reasons and remediation milestone. Quiet fixes invite quiet backsliding. Daylight sets a bar everyone can see. This aligns with withhold release orders trends where shipment-level evidence can halt imports. Now the hard part, price. Build a living margin for clean labor into the bid. Stated in writing, pennies per pound ring-fenced for recruiter pays, worker voice, and segregation costs. Multi-year contracts at stable volumes in exchange for proof of these systems working reduce panic buying that fuels brokers. Tie executive bonuses to verified labor outcomes, not just cost and on-time delivery. What gets bonused gets done. Micro story, a brand runs its first true stress test. A bag from a Midwestern store triggers a trace. 42 hours later, they're standing at a landing site, cross-checking tote colors to lot codes. A worker hotline pinged that week about fees charged by a recruiter. The supplier repays every worker, posts the receipts, and the brand keeps the contract at a higher price that covers the fix. The broker who can't show segregation loses the business. This isn't charity. It's engineering out the failure points we just walked through: debt, off-book labor, commingling, staged audits, and replacing them with systems that make abuse unprofitable. When the rules change, routes change. Make the clean route the fastest, cheapest path to a sale and watch who adapts. Your playbook, practical consumer moves. You're not powerless. The same systems that hide abuse respond to pressure, but only when money and attention move. Start simple, buy less, better. Shrimp is a luxury dressed as a weeknight staple. Shrink frequency, bump quality. When you do buy, shift to brands that publish real supply maps, vessel or farm IDs, landing sites, and audits with dates and names, not just logos. If a brand can't show its chain beyond a slogan, it hasn't done the work. Viral nudge. Post receipts and tag retailers. Public proof hacks the social proof bias in your favor. Pick your battlegrounds. Risk isn't evenly spread. Cold water, trap-caught species from tightly regulated regions tend to be safer than tropical shrimp rooted through opaque hubs. Smaller domestic fisheries with dock-to-dish programs, community-supported seafood, and direct market fishers offer traceable paths that cut out the middlemen who profit from confusion. Less volume, more visibility. Ask for proof, not poetry. In stores, flip the bag and look for product of where, processed where, and a lot or batch code. Then ask the retailer at the counter or by email for the vessel or farm IDs behind that code and any third-party report that tested those claims. You'll get silence sometimes. Log it. When someone answers with specifics, landing port, dates, auditor name, that's a signal. Reward it with your purchase. Online, ignore the hero photo and scroll to details. If you see traceable to vessel, ask for the vessel's name and last known landing. If you see a certification, ask where labor sits in scope. Sustainable doesn't equal no forced labor. Look for recruiter pays language, unannounced audits, worker hotlines with independent operators, and segregation at landing. Brands that have it will tell you fast. If they cite SIMP, ask for the actual fields. Vessel ID, harvest area, landing date, not just the acronym. Shift species when needed. If shrimp is murky, swap in bivalves from verified farms, hook and line fish from transparent fisheries, or canned products from producers with public lot-level traceability. Build new habits that don't rely on the riskiest lanes. Every menu change is a message. Back the people doing extraction, not the extractors. Support NGOs that run rescues, legal aid, and worker hotlines in Thai, Burmese, Khmer, Vietnamese, Lao, and Tagalog. A small monthly donation translates into real leverage when a deckhand finds a phone and a lifeline. Follow their reports, use them to guide purchases. Restaurants are leverage factories. Servers can route questions to buyers. Ask 3 things. Do you know the vessel or farm? Who paid recruitment fees? Can you share an audit less than a year old? If the answer is a shrug, choose a different dish and say why. If the answer is precise, tip well and come back. Send a follow-up email. Managers read those. Use your receipts like votes and your reviews like megaphones. When you buy from a transparent brand, say so in a review and name the proof you saw. When you walk away from a vague label, say why. No vessel ID, no sale is a line that buyers notice when it shows up in public. Organize soft power. Neighborhood groups, PTA chats, workplace channels share a short list of better options and a template email to retailers. Require recruiter pays, unannounced worker-led audits, and no commingling from dock to plant or lose our business. 10 customers aligned beat 1 outraged tweet. Set your own red lines. For many, it's no third country product of without farm or vessel ID, no mixed origin lots, and no certifications that exclude labor. Write them down, keep them in your notes app, and shop against them. Plan your freezer so panic doesn't make choices for you. Keep 2 trusted proteins on hand so you're not forced into a sketchy BOGO at 8 p.m. Convenience is a lever the bad actors count on. Remove it. Finally, keep receipts on companies, not just products. When a brand publishes a remediation report, fees repaid, passports returned, lot segregation in place, reward it. When a brand responds to an investigation with spin and silence, walk. Email their customer service and say you'll be back when they publish vessel IDs and recruiter pays proof. Quiet exits get ignored. Stated conditions set targets. You won't fix the ocean with one cart, but you can starve the worst routes and feed the best ones. Money is a signal. Send yours where workers' names aren't just line items on a ledger and where a bag of shrimp comes with a story you could tell without flinching. Why you still believe the label? You're smart, you've heard the stories. And yet in the aisle your hand still reaches for the bag with the blue or green seal. That's not hypocrisy, that's how our brains stay sane under fluorescent lights. Convenience bias gets first swing. Cheap feels right to a tired wallet. Your week has a rhythm and shrimp slots neatly into it. Quick thaw, quick cook, quick win. The label reduces friction, so your brain rewards the shortcut. It's not a decision, it's a reflex. Authority bias does the next quiet favor. A seal, a store brand, a corporate tone wrapped in responsibly sourced. Those cues calm the part of you that doesn't want to research dinner. We're wired to trust uniforms and stamps, and packaging is a uniform built to be trusted. If a retailer you've used for years prints trusted partners, your mind files it under safe because that's what got you through yesterday. Distance bias seals it. Offshore harm is hard to feel, even when you care. A deck in the Gulf of Thailand is abstract compared to kids at your table. You can picture your skillet. You can't picture a mixed lot at a landing site you've never seen. So the brain chooses the scene it can paint and leaves the rest in grayscale. It's not that you don't care. It's that the story is too far away to grab you in 10 seconds. Marketing overload is design, not accident. Sustainability buzzwords collide on 1 square inch: sustainable, ocean-friendly, traceable, responsible, until they blur into a single promise: good. The terms have real definitions in standards documents, but on a bag they function as one mood. You're not parsing scope, you're parsing dinner. The seal fills the gap between your intention and your time. Habit loops do the rest. You tried this brand once on sale, liked the texture, and never got sick. The loop locked. Cue Tuesday, routine thaw, saute, reward clean plates. Breaking a loop takes effort, and effort is expensive when work ran late and the sink's already full. So you keep the loop and outsource the ethics to someone who put a logo on a bag. There's another layer. Certainty is addictive. Traceable to vessel reads like closure. You scan a QR code and see a boat name. Your brain clicks into narrative mode. A captain, a catch, a date. What you don't see is whether that boat shared a cold room with 5 others or whether the peeling happened off-book. The certainty is curated, but the sensation is real. You buy the feeling because the feeling is what the aisle sells. Meanwhile, loss aversion beats concern for distant harm. Missing a BOGO hurts right now. Harm to a stranger you'll never meet doesn't trip the same alarm. So the promo sign outshouts the headline you read last week. Your brain isn't cruel, it's efficient. It saves you from decision fatigue by prioritizing what's in front of you. Retail design amplifies the biases. Eye-level sets, strike-through prices, badges at the corner of your gaze. These cues nudge without asking permission. A good, better, best ladder tells you who you are by which shelf you pick. If the good tier carries a seal, the ladder hints you're already decent. Moving up feels optional, not urgent. The store has engineered forgiveness into the planogram. Then there's social proof. Friends post dinners, influencers drop sustainable recipe links with affiliate codes, chefs name brands that sponsor segments. You absorb a consensus you didn't vote on. The absence of outrage becomes a kind of endorsement. If no one in your circle raises the labor question, the silence says the problem's under control. And when the scandal spikes, the cycle protects itself. A brand issues a statement with a plan, a seal announces new requirements, and your mind files the event as handled. You don't track follow-through because life moved on. The next time you shop, the same bag offers the same comfort and the loop restarts. You still believe the label because it offers speed, safety, and a story that fits inside a weeknight. It's not your fault, it is your leverage. The moment you demand proof instead of poetry, the label has to catch up to your belief. The bill. Who pays for cheap? There's a cost ledger nobody shows you. On one side sits your $5.99 bag. On the other are people, places, and rules bent until they break. The human bill arrives first. A deckhand's missing finger isn't an accident, it's a line item. A migrant who pays a recruiter $1,500 to earn $8 a day isn't building a future. He's servicing a product you'll eat in 15 minutes. Every day he stays at sea. To repay a debt you never saw is a subsidy you pocket without asking. Trauma compounds interest. Months without sleep cycles, beatings that blur time, a phone held hostage. Those things don't stop when a boat docks. Men go home to families who have survived on remittances that never came, carrying injuries that never got treated, waking for years at the sound of an engine. The bill is paid in surgeries delayed, kids pulled out of school, and a silence that follows them into jobs that don't ask about scars. The ocean pays its share too. When illegal nets scrape the bottom to feed fish meal, nursery grounds flat, bycatch dies, stocks thin in ways that won't show up on a price tag for years. Trash fish isn't trash to the ecosystem, but it becomes pellets that fatten farm shrimp fast enough to meet a promotion calendar. The feed conversion looks efficient, the ledger says otherwise. Honest fishers pay in empty nets and falling prices they didn't cause. Local communities carry hidden lines. Ports that run on fees grow cynical. Schools teach kids to avoid certain streets. Shelters stay full. In the processing towns, unregistered sheds skirt taxes, safety, and waste rules, dumping costs into ditches and hospitals. The neighborhood breathes ammonia and diesel, while export earnings leave through bank accounts with names that never appear on a door. Now line that up against cheap. The bag's price looks low because the bill is off-balance sheet. Recruiter fees shift labor costs downward. Cash wages erase overtime and benefits. Commingling erases origin premiums. Third country processing erases liabilities. Each erasure is a saving your wallet recognizes and someone else bleeds for. The price you see is a fiction stabilized by people least able to contest it. Ethical shrimp isn't expensive, fake cheap is. When a plant internalizes peeling, pays recruiter fees, segregates lots, and funds worker hotlines, the per pound cost moves by pennies. Those pennies won't break your month. They will break the business model of a broker who survives on debt and plausible deniability. If a brand tells you we'd have to raise prices by dollars, they're telling on their margin, not on the math. Brands face a choice they like to frame as impossible: margins or morals. It's margins or people. Vendor scorecards that rank cost and on-time delivery above labor outcomes set the answer in advance. When buyers demand $5.99 floors and 3 promo events per quarter, suppliers choose tactics that fit. You've seen the inbox. Everyone knew enough. They chose the shelf. Your leverage is simple and inconvenient. Attention, money, and questions. Attention makes silence expensive. Money makes clean routes viable. Questions force systems to reveal what they'd rather imply. Ask where labor sits in scope. Ask who paid the recruiter. Ask for a vessel ID and a landing site, not a hashtag and a photo. If the answers are fast and specific, pay. If they aren't, pass. The first time stings. The second time becomes a habit. Micro story: a retailer tests a new rule: no mixed lots from landing to bag. 2 suppliers walk. One stays, raises price by 9 cents, and publishes vessel IDs. Sales dip for a month, then stabilize as shoppers who asked for proof bring friends. The retailer's margin slides a hair. The supplier's hotline lights up and resolves cases in days, not quarters. A broker loses a lane. A dorm gets quieter. There's one more line on the bill: the cost of not changing. Every scandal that fades trains the next one to expect the same outcome. A law without teeth teaches middlemen where to hide. A seal without labor scope tells buyers which logo to choose. The ocean learns to bear less. Workers learn to expect less. Consumers learn to ask less. That's a tab nobody can afford forever. So here's the line that matters: cheap shrimp is a transfer, not a bargain. If you're not paying, someone is. Make sure the person paying isn't the one with the least power to say no. Cheap shrimp stays cheap because someone else pays with their body, their debt, and their years at sea. If you want the truth to change shelves, subscribe for more investigations that name names, share this to make retailers feel it, and watch our next episode on food label frauds that look green but hide red flags. Your next receipt can be a lever. Use it. Appendix: set up payoff breadcrumbs to plant early and resolve. We opened with your $8 dinner with a side of slavery and planted a seal you trust being part of the problem. In Act IV, we paid it off. Labor out of scope, pre-announced audits, certifiers paid by clients. Early, we teased traceability theater. In Act III, we showed mixed lots, retags, and QR codes that echoed curated fiction. We promised an inbox receipt that price beats ethics. Act VI delivered retailer emails prioritizing floor prices and continuity over origin, plus fast-track alternative channels. We hinted at a boat you'd never see. Act VIII sat you on deck for the grind, the radio call, and the count that came back right on paper. We planted what actually works won't fit on a sticker. Acts X and XI laid out worker-led audits, recruiter pays, segregation at landing, real traceability, and your playbook. Buy less better, ask for vessel IDs, reward proof. We asked why you still believe labels. Act XII unpacked convenience, authority, distance, and habit loops that marketing exploits. Finally, we promised the bill. Act XII totaled it: human trauma, ecosystems, honest fishers, communities, and the fake math behind cheap, ending on the only line that matters: sources and verification plan. Here's how we kept this story honest. We built from verifiable public records first. The Associated Press's 2015 investigation tracing seafood from Benjana, Indonesia, into global supply chains and freeing more than 2,000 men. AP follow-ups on Thai peeling sheds in Samut Sakhon. BBC, Guardian, and CBC coverage. Human Rights Watch's Hidden Chains, 2018. We cross-checked with U.S. government materials. State Department Trafficking in Persons reports, 2014-2024, Department of Labor's list of goods produced by child labor or forced labor, NOAA's Seafood Import Monitoring Program Guidance, launched 2018, and U.S. International Trade Commission analyses of IUU seafood. For corporate claims, we used on-record statements and filings only. Thai Union's Modern Slavery Act statements and public commitments, post-2015, retailer policy documents, and trade association summaries. Allegations stay labeled as allegations unless confirmed by court filings, import alerts, withhold release orders, or official sanction. We avoided anonymous sourcing for new claims. Survivor accounts were drawn from published interviews with translators and protections in place. Supply chain specifics, commingling, retagging, third country processing were grounded in reports from the Environmental Justice Foundation, EJF, Fairfood, and RDC, the Stimson Center, and legal analyses on seafood fraud. Where data conflicted, we omitted or noted uncertainty. No invented quotes. Corporate email language was paraphrased from discovery excerpts reported in the press. Human moments were composites of documented patterns, not dramatizations of unnamed sources. If you want to audit us, our description box is linked to every primary document we relied on. Facts lead, feelings follow.